Welcome back to Prosperity Playbook. We are three friends who decided that we learned a lot of life lessons just through life, not in school, that we wanted to share with other people so that you can hopefully learn from our mistakes. I am Renee Gogler. I am a mortgage loan officer.
I am Britt Murphy. I am an insurance agent.
And I'm Courtney King. I am a realtor.
So our topic today is buying versus renting. And based on who we just told you that we are, I'm guessing that you think we're going to be all about buying and not renting. So I promise you this will not be super biased. We are going to explore the good, the bad, and the ugly about both sides.
Absolutely. And I'm not a realtor. I am a realtor.
That's an excellent clarification. Awesome. Well, I think one of the topics to just really start us off with is, of course, we know that the average net worth of a renter versus a buyer is very different. It's actually 40 times higher if you are a homeowner versus a renter. So that's a huge number. So we all know that for the most part, buying a home is a good goal for most people, but it's not always the right answer for everybody at every stage of your life. So let's talk about some of the reasons why renting can be a good thing and what might be happening in your life when you shouldn't buy a home.
Absolutely. It's definitely very important to consider your finances and your lifestyle when you're contemplating if buying a home is right for you. I also think it's really important to consider how much expendable income you have, because when Forrest and I were house searching and kind of going through the initial process, we knew that we had a good amount to put down for a down payment, and we knew that we would be easily able to pay, our monthly mortgage payment and taxes and insurance and all of the expected costs. And we were like, sweet, it's going to be cheaper than renting. Guess what? Then we had to replace our roof, and we had to replace our water softener. And, there's all of the yard lawn maintenance, the snow removal, just all the extra stuff that comes with being a homeowner. So even though we have so much more freedom, we also have so much less freedom because we're homeowners, because there are all of these extra things that we didn't necessarily take into consideration. So I think that taking, the maintenance, the upkeep costs, everything else into mind is a really important factor.
Yeah, you need like an HOA little kiddie pool to keep all your extra money that we never have in so that you can address those things.
So I guess just to back that up a little bit. So if you're a renter and something goes wrong with your property and you have an issue, in theory, you can call your landlord and they will come fix it for you. I know these ladies have some stories about how that doesn't always happen, but that is one of the advantages to being a renter, is that if things don't go well, one, you can just move out and go find a different place to live, opposed to where, if you just go straight to buying a house, you're responsible for everything. So in a condo, you're still responsible for what happens inside your unit. Like nobody's going to come change your light bulb and unplug your toilet for you. But you can at least have those options to have part of it be covered by somebody else.
And I've known plenty of people. There's even a guy that owns a big company here that when he was talking about putting his house on the market, he said, I never want to own a property again. I would much rather rent and not have the headache of, I just had to replace the entire sewer line to my house.
Yeah, and things like that happen. And I think that that's the exception rather than the rule. Like I've owned a lot of houses, and knock on wood, I have not ever had something really dramatic happen like that was not covered by insurance. But I do think that that's something to take into consideration.
I have a standalone home warranty product. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Well, I have a few different ones, but basically, we talked a little bit about how home insurance doesn't cover wear and tear. It doesn't cover neglect. Well, home warranty is for wear and tear. If you just have a water heater that goes out because it's old, your home warranty is meant for things like that. And so it will cover a lot of your home systems. I especially recommend it if you buy a house that has like in-floor heat or just kind of an upgraded system that's maybe not like a standard traditional system. It's pretty important because a lot of times if a home gets struck by lightning and it has something like that, it's going to be affected. And so we sell a lot of those for that reason.
My mother is almost 80 and she was told her air conditioner that's 18 years old needs to get replaced. Can it cover, could I put a home warranty on her house to help cover those things? And how would that work? Is there a deductible?
Yeah, there's a deductible, which means that's the amount that you have to pay out of pocket before insurance will pay, but you get to choose the deductible. So sometimes it's only $100 or so. And some of the policies that I sell do have what you call a waiting period, which means that you have to have had the policy in place for 3 months, 6 months before it's going to cover something. They typically will do that because they don't want you to get the policy in place if you already have something that needs to be replaced. You know, if your water heater goes out and you get a home warranty the next day and file a claim, obviously that's not what those are made for.
Yeah. Well, she wasn't convinced it even needs to get replaced. She thinks they were just telling her it needs to get replaced.
So that is a great tip if that's something that you're concerned about to help bridge that gap. So especially for a first-time home buyer, if you're coming in and you don't have a lot of liquidity, or maybe you have an elder relative, that could be a way to really help them bridge the gap, because I see that a lot with senior citizens where they assume that because their house might be free and clear at this point that it's just a free place to live, but it ends up being, you know, insurance is expensive, taxes are expensive, HOA dues are expensive, and then they get all these repairs and it can be a deal breaker for them. So that might actually be, you know, there's a good Christmas gift for grandma.
Seriously, though.
So we should talk about the positive sides of being a homeowner now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming from the realtor.
Well, I was just telling you guys this story not that long ago about my only real estate regrets are the things that I didn't buy. And I think a lot of times people get super wrapped up in making sure that that payment is perfect and all of that stuff. But the real secret to the real estate market is getting in as soon as you can. And we're going to talk about this whole housing crisis a little bit more in our next episode. But that's the secret, is get into the market as soon as you can, start building equity in something that you can start moving up. For example, my husband and I had an opportunity to buy a fourplex years ago, and it was a pretty good deal for us at the time, but we just really were like, man, it doesn't cash flow that much. And we don't have a lot of extra in the bank. And it just felt like a big risk for us at the time, but we would have made $1 million on that property between what it was worth then and what it's worth now. Over $1 million. I mean, yes, would it have been a risk, but that seems like a pretty good risk. So that is something that I think a lot of people don't realize how important that building of equity is. Mm-hmm. And even in a slow market where, like, right now appreciation isn't crazy, your average in the United States this year is 4%. That's still building equity for you. You're paying your mortgage down when you make your payments, and that value is going up for you. And then every once in a while, you'll catch one of those booms where things go up pretty significantly. And after owning a home for 2 years and selling it, you can actually take the proceeds from that. So what your gain is, without paying any taxes, up to $250,000 per person, $500,000 per couple. There are very few times in our lives we get handed big chunks of tax-free money. And that is a super, super important one. And I've seen so many clients over the years that I've done mortgages for who barely scrape by to get a house. And then a couple years later, that house has gone up in value a ton, and they sell it and they have real cash that they can put in the bank. They're building wealth for their families. And not only that, but their payments have stayed consistent. And I think that is one of the things that's a little bit overlooked. If you're a renter, you have no control over what your rent's going to be next year. Your landlord can change that. You know, people talk about property taxes going up. Well, guess who else's property taxes just went up? Your landlord. So if their property taxes went up, your rent is going to go up. Mm-hmm. So you're not safe from property taxes going up because you're a renter, and your landlord is going to increase that rent accordingly as necessary, but you're not building any equity. You're building equity for them.
And you don't have any guarantee for how long you can stay in that home if you're renting. I have plenty of friends who, you know, they were kind of banking on being able to just stay in a place for as long as they wanted to. And then either it sells, or there's a new property management company, or, you know, whatever happens.
Sometimes
and you end
the
up having
seller
to
wants
move
to
out.
move into the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It happens all the time.
It does. It's actually one of the main reasons I see a lot of younger people figuring out that they can buy a home, because I think a lot of this younger generation thinks that they can't. And again, stay tuned for the next episode. But when you think you can't, but all of a sudden now you're getting put out on the street because your landlord is kicking you out, sometimes that's what is your catalyst to figure out, can I buy a home, or do I need to go rent again? And a lot of times those people find out that they actually can buy, which is a really cool thing. But this happens all the time.
Can I tell you my story, how I got spoiled? And I don't know that this is going to be the case anymore because of the appreciation that we've seen since the pandemic of 30+% in our area. But when I was that renter and decided to buy the house when I became a realtor. And my parents told me not to. They sent me actually 30 reasons why not to buy the house. And I decided to do it anyway. Well, my stepdad was in the Navy and he lost money on a property because he got deployed and he didn't keep the house and rent it out. He sold it. So he ended up losing money on it because the market had changed.
A lot of people, I would say, don't know where their money is going. A lot of times for me, like my paychecks fluctuate because I'm 100% commission, and it really doesn't matter how much money I make. I seem to spend it all unless I have something very specific that is a forced savings plan. So for me, I have a certain percentage of my paycheck that automatically goes to another bank, not where my checking account is, and that money's just gone. I don't see it. It's in a savings account that's sitting there. I also have mortgages on the properties that I own, and there is principal being earned there. So there's forced savings that's happening, even if I'm not being responsible with the rest of my money. But I do see this trend where a lot of this younger generation, they're very worried about being house poor because they like to do all the other things. And I don't necessarily think that's terrible, but it's a choice. And that's what I want people to recognize is maybe, just maybe, that house that you buy is going to make you start adulting a little bit more. And it's going to make you put that money into your mortgage payment each month. And yes, you're not going to be able to go out to eat as many times, or maybe you only get to go on vacation once a year instead of going several times a year, or maybe you just are not going to buy new clothes or a new purse for this month or next month. And that might be okay, but that is a really personal choice. So I want to go back and talk about what are the reasons when somebody shouldn't buy a house.
Well, I think something to keep in mind is how long do you see yourself spending in this home?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if you don't see yourself being in that home for 5 years, it might not make sense to buy.
Well, there are certain rules even with the mortgage of how long you need to hold the property, right, Renee?
So for most mortgages, when you sign documents at closing saying it's going to be your primary residence, you are saying as of right now that it is my intention to occupy that property for at least a year. Now, as long as that's truly your intention, that's fine. If something changes, if you get a job transfer and you got to move out of state 2 months later, fine. No, the mortgage police are not coming after you for that.
Tune in for the next episode. We'll talk about the housing crisis and how you might be able to buy when you don't think that you can. Here's to empowering one another, one story at a time.